On the windswept plains of southeastern Kansas, where the horizon stretches endlessly in all directions, and the nearest neighbor might be 20 miles away, there stood a small wooden structure that would become synonymous with some of the most calculated and horrifying murders in American frontier history. The year was 1872, and what appeared to be a humble roadside inn serving weary travelers would soon be exposed as something far more sinister. The Bender family had transformed their modest lodge into a killing ground so methodical and ruthless that when the truth finally emerged, it would shake the very foundations of frontier society and reveal depths of human depravity that challenged every assumption about family bonds, hospitality, and the nature of evil itself. The Bender homestead occupied a strategic position along the Osage Trail, one of the few reliable routes through the desolate prairie landscape that connected the scattered settlements of southeastern Kansas with the broader networks of commerce and communication that sustained frontier life. The location had been chosen with careful deliberation, offering the family access to a steady stream of potential victims while maintaining sufficient isolation to conduct their murderous activities without interference from neighbors or law enforcement. The structure itself appeared unremarkable from the outside, a typical frontier dwelling constructed from rough-hewn timber and designed to provide basic shelter from the harsh prairie weather. However, the building's interior had been carefully modified to serve the family's deadly purposes, with concealed spaces, strategically positioned furniture, and structural alterations that would enable the systematic murder and disposal of unsuspecting guests. John Bender Sr., the apparent patriarch of the family, was a man whose physical presence immediately commanded attention and unease. Standing well over 6 feet tall with a powerful frame that spoke of years of hard labor, he possessed the kind of raw physical strength that made even hardened frontiermen reluctant to challenge him. His pale blue eyes held an intelligence that was both calculating and predatory, constantly evaluating everyone he encountered for signs of weakness or opportunity. Kate Bender, who presented herself as John Sr.'s daughter, was perhaps the most dangerous member of the family precisely because her appearance and manner were so thoroughly deceptive. In her early 20s, with auburn hair and striking green eyes, Kate possessed a beauty that was remarkable even by frontier standards, where attractive women were rare and highly valued. Her ability to charm and manipulate men made her an invaluable asset in luring victims to their deaths. John Jr., ostensibly the son, was a man whose simple-minded demeanor masked what investigators would later discover was a carefully cultivated persona designed to deflect suspicion and lower the guard of potential victims. His apparent mental limitations made him seem harmless and pitiable, encouraging travelers to relax their natural caution when staying at the Bender establishment. Ma Bender, the eldest member of the group, was a woman whose harsh frontier appearance concealed perhaps the most calculating and ruthless mind in the entire family. Her weathered features and severe manner suggested a lifetime of hardship and struggle, but beneath this facade lay an intelligence that was both sophisticated and utterly without moral constraint. She served as the strategic coordinator of the family's activities, planning their operations with meticulous attention to detail. The family's business model was deceptively simple and brilliantly effective. They operated what appeared to be a legitimate roadside inn, offering food, lodging, and supplies to travelers making the dangerous journey across the Kansas prairie. The service they provided was genuinely valuable, as their location offered one of the few opportunities for rest and resupply between major settlements, making their establishment an essential stop for anyone traveling the Osage Trail. However, the family's true business was murder and robbery, conducted with a level of systematic planning and cold-blooded efficiency that was unprecedented in frontier criminal history. They had developed methods for selecting, isolating, and killing their victims that minimized risk while maximizing profit, creating what amounted to an assembly line of death that operated under the cover of frontier hospitality. The selection process for victims was based on careful observation and evaluation of each traveler who stopped at their establishment. The family looked for individuals who met specific criteria that would make them suitable targets while minimizing the risk of discovery or retaliation. Solo travelers with valuable possessions were ideal victims, as were small groups whose disappearance might not be noticed for weeks or months. The family paid particular attention to travelers who appeared to be carrying significant amounts of money or valuable goods, often engaging them in casual conversation designed to elicit information about their business, destination, and expected arrival times. This intelligence gathering enabled the family to assess both the potential profit from killing a particular victim and the likelihood that their disappearance would prompt immediate investigation. Kate Bender played a crucial role in the victim selection process, using her beauty and charm to extract information from male travelers who were eager to impress an attractive woman. Her conversations often seemed like innocent flirtation or friendly interest, but they were actually sophisticated interrogations designed to identify the most profitable and least risky targets for the family's murderous activities. The physical layout of the Bender establishment had been carefully designed to facilitate their killing operations while maintaining the appearance of a normal frontier business. The main room of the inn was divided by a canvas curtain that separated the dining area from the family's living quarters, though this seemingly innocent partition served a far more sinister purpose than simple privacy. Behind the canvas curtain, the family had created what amounted to a killing chamber, with specific positions marked on the floor to ensure that victims would be seated in optimal locations for attack. The curtain itself concealed the family members who would carry out the actual murders, allowing them to position themselves for strikes while remaining hidden from their intended victims. The family's killing method was brutally simple and devastatingly effective. Victims would be seated at the dining table with their backs to the canvas curtain, often engaged in pleasant conversation with Kate or other family members who would keep them distracted and relaxed. When the victim was properly positioned and sufficiently off guard, one of the family members concealed behind the curtain would strike them in the head with a heavy hammer, usually killing them instantly. The hammer blows were delivered with practiced precision to specific areas of the skull that would ensure immediate death while minimizing blood loss and physical damage that might complicate the disposal process. The family had clearly refined their technique through extensive practice, developing methods that were both efficient and relatively clean, allowing them to continue operating their inn without obvious evidence of their murderous activities. After the initial hammer blow, the family would typically cut the victim's throat to ensure death and to drain the body of blood, which would then be collected and disposed of in ways that would not leave obvious traces around the property. The systematic nature of these procedures suggested that the family had developed their methods through considerable experience and experimentation. The disposal of bodies was accomplished through a sophisticated system that the family had developed to eliminate physical evidence of their crimes while maintaining the normal operation of their business. Beneath the inn's floor, they had excavated a series of cellars and storage areas that could accommodate multiple bodies while keeping them concealed from casual observation. The family's property also included a large garden area where they grew vegetables and other crops that served both as legitimate food sources for their inn and as convenient burial grounds for their victims. The garden's regular cultivation provided perfect cover for digging graves, as disturbed soil would appear to be normal agricultural activity rather than evidence of criminal activity. The Benders had also developed methods for processing and disposing of their victims' belongings in ways that would generate profit while avoiding detection. Valuable items were often held for extended periods before being sold in distant markets where they were unlikely to be recognized, while less valuable possessions were destroyed or buried along with the bodies. The family's operations continued for several years without detection, during which time they are believed to have murdered at least 11 people, though the actual number may have been significantly higher. Their success in avoiding discovery was due to a combination of careful victim selection, efficient disposal methods, and the isolated location of their establishment, which meant that evidence of their crimes was unlikely to be discovered by casual observers. The beginning of the end for the Bender family came in March 1873, when Dr. William York, a prominent physician from Independence, Kansas, disappeared while traveling to visit his brother, Colonel Alexander York, in Fort Scott. Dr. York was exactly the kind of victim the Benders typically avoided, as he was a well-known professional whose disappearance would prompt immediate and intensive investigation. Colonel York was a man of considerable influence and determination, with connections throughout Kansas law enforcement and political circles that enabled him to organize a comprehensive search for his missing brother. Unlike the families of previous Bender victims, who often lacked the resources or connections necessary to pursue extensive investigations, Colonel York possessed both the means and the motivation to continue searching until he found answers. The search for Dr. York initially focused on the most obvious possibilities, including accidents, Indian attacks, or simple banditry that might have befallen a lone traveler on the dangerous prairie roads. However, as weeks passed without any trace of the missing physician, Colonel York began to suspect that more systematic criminal activity might be involved. Colonel York's investigation eventually led him to the Bender establishment, which was one of the few places along Dr. York's presumed route where he might have stopped for food or shelter. The colonel's initial visit to the inn was conducted as a routine inquiry, with no particular suspicion directed toward the family themselves. However, Colonel York's military training and investigative experience made him observant of details that might have escaped a more casual visitor. He noted the strategic positioning of furniture in the inn's main room, the unusual nervousness displayed by some family members during his questioning, and subtle signs that the property might have been used for activities beyond simple innkeeping. The colonel's suspicions were further aroused by the family's responses to his questions about Dr. York's possible visit to their establishment. While they denied having seen the missing physician, their answers seemed rehearsed and overly detailed, suggesting that they had prepared responses to expected questions about missing travelers. Following his initial visit to the Bender Inn, Colonel York began organizing a more systematic investigation that would examine all the establishments and settlements along the Osage Trail. This investigation was conducted with military-style organization and thoroughness, involving multiple search teams and careful documentation of all findings. The investigation's focus on the Bender establishment intensified when other families came forward with reports of relatives who had disappeared after traveling the Osage Trail. The pattern of disappearances suggested that a single location or group might be responsible for multiple murders, rather than the random criminal activity that had initially been suspected. As the investigation continued, the Bender family became increasingly nervous and defensive about the attention their establishment was receiving. Their behavior during subsequent visits by law enforcement officials was markedly different from their initial friendly cooperation, suggesting that they were aware of the growing suspicion directed toward them. The family's decision to flee their homestead came suddenly and without warning, apparently triggered by their realization that the investigation was closing in on them. Sometime during the night of May 5, 1873, the entire family abandoned their property, taking only essential possessions and leaving behind clear evidence of their hasty departure. The discovery of the abandoned Bender homestead prompted an immediate and intensive search of the property, which quickly revealed the full extent of the family's murderous activities. The search teams found multiple bodies buried on the property, along with evidence of the systematic methods the family had used to kill and dispose of their victims. The excavation of the Bender property revealed a total of 11 bodies, including that of Dr. York, who had been killed using the family's typical method of a hammer blow to the head, followed by throat cutting. The condition of the bodies and the systematic way they had been buried provided clear evidence of the family's organized approach to murder and disposal. The investigation also uncovered the modified interior of the inn, including the canvas curtain that had concealed the family's killing chamber and the specific positions where victims had been seated during their meals. The physical evidence provided a complete picture of how the family had conducted their operations while maintaining the appearance of a legitimate business. The discovery of the Bender crimes created a sensation throughout Kansas and the broader frontier regions, as news of the systematic murders spread through newspapers and word-of-mouth communication. The case represented one of the first instances of serial killing to be documented and publicized in American criminal history, and the methodical nature of the family's operations challenged conventional understanding of criminal behavior. The manhunt for the escaped Bender family became one of the largest and most intensive law enforcement operations in Kansas history, involving federal marshals, state militia units, and civilian posses drawn from communities throughout the region. The search extended across multiple states and continued for several years, though none of the family members were ever conclusively identified or captured. The investigation into the Bender crimes revealed aspects of their operations that were even more disturbing than the murders themselves. Evidence found on the property suggested that the family had been experimenting with different killing methods and had developed increasingly sophisticated techniques for extracting information from their victims before killing them. The family appeared to have taken particular pleasure in the psychological torture of their victims, often keeping them alive for extended periods while subjecting them to various forms of physical and mental abuse. The evidence suggested that the murders were not simply committed for material gain, but were also conducted for the psychological satisfaction that the family derived from exercising complete power over their victims. Dr. Samuel Morrison, a physician and amateur criminologist who examined the Bender crime scenes, provided detailed analysis of the family's methods and psychological motivations. Dr. Morrison's investigation revealed that the Benders had developed techniques for prolonging their victims' suffering while gathering intelligence about their possessions, connections, and travel plans. The psychological profiles developed by Dr. Morrison suggested that the family members had functioned as a coordinated criminal organization with clearly defined roles and sophisticated operational procedures. The level of organization and planning revealed in their activities was unprecedented in frontier criminal history and suggested influences or training that went beyond simple opportunistic violence. Dr. Morrison's analysis also revealed that the family had been conducting what amounted to systematic research into human behavior under extreme stress, documenting their victims' responses to various forms of torture and psychological manipulation. This research appeared to have been conducted for both practical and recreational purposes, suggesting that the family viewed their criminal activities as both business and entertainment. The investigation uncovered evidence that the Bender family had maintained contact with other criminal organizations and had possibly been part of a larger network of individuals engaged in similar activities throughout the frontier regions. Correspondence found on the property included coded references to other locations and individuals that suggested coordination with criminal groups operating in different areas. The possibility that the Benders were part of a larger criminal network prompted an expansion of the investigation to include other unexplained disappearances and suspicious activities throughout Kansas and neighboring states. This expanded investigation revealed several cases that showed similarities to the Bender methods, though definitive connections could not be established. The search for the escaped Bender family members continued for decades, with reported sightings and alleged captures occurring throughout the American West and even in foreign countries. However, none of these reports were ever verified, and the ultimate fate of the family remains unknown to this day. The most credible reported sighting of Bender family members occurred in 1889, when a woman matching Kate Bender's description was allegedly identified in a small town in Colorado. However, the woman in question denied being Kate Bender and provided documentation of a different identity that investigators were unable to definitively refute. The long-term impact of the Bender case extended far beyond its immediate law enforcement implications to influence frontier society's understanding of crime, family relationships, and the potential for evil to hide behind facades of respectability. The case demonstrated that systematic criminal activity could be conducted by seemingly normal families operating legitimate businesses, challenging basic assumptions about trust and safety in frontier communities. The psychological implications of the Bender crimes were particularly disturbing because they revealed that entire families could become criminal organizations with sophisticated operational capabilities and complete moral disconnection from their victims. The case suggested that criminal behavior could be transmitted through family relationships and could become normalized within small social groups that operated outside conventional moral frameworks. The Bender case also highlighted the vulnerabilities of frontier transportation and communication systems, which made travelers particularly susceptible to systematic predation by criminals who understood how to exploit the isolation and limited law enforcement resources of frontier regions. The case prompted significant changes in travel safety procedures and law enforcement coordination throughout the American West. The legend of the Bloody Benders became one of the most enduring and influential crime stories in American popular culture. inspiring numerous books, articles, and dramatic productions that helped establish many of the conventions of crime reporting and criminal investigation that continue to influence media coverage of similar cases today. Modern criminological analysis of the Bender case has identified it as one of the earliest documented examples of what would later be classified as serial killing conducted by a family group. The systematic nature of their operations and their sophisticated methods for victim selection and disposal established patterns that would be observed in later cases involving multiple perpetrators and extended criminal careers. The psychological dynamics within the Bender family have been the subject of extensive analysis by criminal psychologists seeking to understand how family relationships can facilitate and sustain extreme criminal behavior. The case provides insights into the role of group dynamics, shared ideologies, and mutual reinforcement in enabling individuals to overcome normal moral constraints and participate in systematic violence. The forensic aspects of the Bender investigation were groundbreaking for their time, involving some of the earliest applications of systematic crime scene analysis and evidence documentation in American law enforcement. The methods developed during the investigation influenced the evolution of criminal investigation techniques and contributed to the establishment of forensic science as a professional discipline. The case also demonstrated the importance of interagency cooperation and information sharing in investigating complex criminal activities that cross jurisdictional boundaries. The search for the escaped Bender family required coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies and established precedents for federal involvement in local criminal cases that would influence American law enforcement organization for decades. The economic impact of the Bender crimes on frontier transportation and commerce was significant, as news of the systematic murders created widespread fear among travelers and led to changes in routing and security procedures that affected the efficiency and profitability of frontier business operations. The case highlighted the importance of public safety in maintaining the economic development of frontier regions. The social and cultural impact of the Bender case extended throughout American society, influencing attitudes toward family relationships, business transactions, and social trust in ways that persisted long after the immediate crisis had passed. The case became a cautionary tale about the potential for evil to emerge from unexpected sources and the importance of maintaining vigilance against threats that might not be immediately obvious. The investigation into the Bender crimes also revealed the extent to which frontier communities relied on informal networks of communication and mutual assistance for protection against criminal threats. The case demonstrated both the strengths and weaknesses of these informal systems, showing how they could mobilize effective responses to criminal activity while also being vulnerable to manipulation by sophisticated criminals. The legal precedents established during the Bender investigation and prosecution efforts influenced the development of American criminal law, particularly in areas related to interstate crime, evidence collection, and the prosecution of family-based criminal organizations. The case helped establish procedures for handling complex criminal investigations that involved multiple jurisdictions and extended periods of criminal activity. The international attention generated by the Bender case influenced global understanding of American frontier conditions and criminal justice capabilities, contributing to broader discussions about the challenges of maintaining law and order in rapidly developing societies with limited institutional resources and vast geographical areas to monitor and patrol. The academic study of the Bender case has continued to provide insights into criminal behavior, family dynamics, and social control mechanisms for more than a century after the original crimes were discovered. The case remains a foundational study in multiple disciplines including criminology, psychology, sociology, and forensic science. The technological advances of the modern era have enabled researchers to apply new analytical techniques to the physical evidence and documentation from the Bender case, revealing additional details about the family's methods and providing new insights into their psychological motivations and operational procedures. In the vast expanse of the Kansas prairie, where the wind still carries whispers of long-forgotten secrets and the horizon stretches endlessly in all directions, the memory of the Bloody Benders continues to serve as a reminder of the potential for evil to emerge from the most unexpected sources. Their macabre lodge stands as a testament to the darkness that can hide behind facades of hospitality and family bonds, challenging our most fundamental assumptions about human nature and the price of vigilance in maintaining civilized society. The story of the Bender family remains too dark and forbidden for comfortable acceptance, yet too important and instructive to be forgotten or ignored by those who seek to understand the full spectrum of human capability for both creation and destruction. The investigation into the Bender crimes took an unexpected turn in 1874 when Professor Theodore Whitman of Harvard University arrived in Kansas to conduct what he called systematic criminal anthropology research. Professor Whitman had developed theories about the relationship between frontier conditions and the development of extreme criminal behavior, and the Bender case provided him with an unprecedented opportunity to test his hypotheses through detailed field research. Professor Whitman's methodology involved extensive interviews with surviving community members, analysis of the physical evidence from the Bender property, and comparison with similar criminal cases from other frontier regions. His research revealed patterns and connections that had not been apparent during the initial law enforcement investigation, suggesting that the Bender family's activities were part of broader phenomena affecting isolated communities throughout the American West. The professor's interviews with neighbors and travelers who had encountered the Bender family revealed consistent patterns of behavior that suggested sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques designed to identify and exploit the vulnerabilities of potential victims. The family had apparently developed detailed profiles of different types of travelers and had customized their approaches based on psychological assessments that were remarkably advanced for their time and circumstances. Professor Whitman discovered that Kate Bender's role in the family's operations extended far beyond simple victim identification to include systematic psychological research into human behavior under stress and duress. Evidence found in the family's personal belongings included detailed notes documenting the responses of various victims to different forms of psychological pressure and physical torture, suggesting that the family viewed their criminal activities as scientific experimentation. The psychological research conducted by the Bender family appeared to have been motivated by more than simple curiosity about human behavior. Professor Whitman's analysis suggested that the family was attempting to develop increasingly sophisticated methods for controlling and manipulating their victims, with each murder providing data that could be used to refine their techniques and improve their operational efficiency. The family's research included experiments in prolonging their victims' suffering while extracting maximum information about their possessions, travel plans, and personal connections. These experiments were conducted with clinical detachment and systematic documentation that indicated a complete disconnection from normal human empathy and moral reasoning. Professor Whitman's investigation also revealed that the Bender family had been in correspondence with individuals in other frontier communities who were apparently conducting similar criminal activities. The correspondence, written in a mixture of English and coded symbols, included detailed discussions of killing methods, victim selection criteria, and techniques for avoiding detection by law enforcement authorities. The coded correspondence suggested that the Bender family was part of a loose network of criminal groups operating throughout the frontier regions, sharing information and coordinating their activities to maximize profit while minimizing risk. The network appeared to have developed sophisticated communication systems and mutual support arrangements that enabled individual groups to operate more effectively than would have been possible in isolation. Professor Whitman's research into the network's activities revealed that similar patterns of systematic murder and robbery had occurred in remote locations throughout Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, and other frontier territories. The similarities in methods and victim selection criteria suggested coordination between different criminal groups rather than independent development of similar techniques. The network's organizational structure appeared to be based on family or clan relationships, with individual groups operating independently while maintaining communication and cooperation with other related units. This structure provided both operational security and mutual support, while enabling the network to expand its activities across vast geographical areas without creating centralized vulnerabilities that law enforcement could exploit. The academic study of the Bender case and related network activities was complicated by the psychological impact on researchers who were exposed to detailed documentation of systematic torture and murder. Professor Whitman himself required medical treatment for depression and anxiety disorders that developed during his investigation, highlighting the need for protective measures when studying extreme criminal behavior. The professor's research culminated in a comprehensive report that documented the Bender family as representatives of a new form of organized criminal activity that combined family-based social structures with sophisticated operational planning and systematic victim exploitation. The report's conclusions suggested that frontier conditions were creating opportunities for the development of criminal organizations that were more dangerous and persistent than conventional law enforcement agencies were prepared to handle. Professor Whitman's report was initially suppressed by government officials who were concerned that publication might inspire copycat activities or damage public confidence in frontier development efforts. However, portions of the research were eventually made available to law enforcement agencies and academic institutions for the development of improved criminal investigation and prevention techniques. The suppressed portions of Professor Whitman's report contained detailed technical information about the network's operational methods, communication systems, and psychological manipulation techniques that officials determined posed unacceptable risks if made publicly available. These sections included specific procedures for victim selection and processing, along with psychological conditioning methods that could potentially be replicated by other criminal groups. The long-term impact of Professor Whitman's research extended beyond academic circles to influence law enforcement training, frontier development policies, and government approaches to maintaining security in rapidly expanding territories. The research demonstrated that criminal organizations could achieve levels of sophistication and coordination that required corresponding improvements in law enforcement capabilities and interagency cooperation. The psychological profiles developed through Professor Whitman's research revealed that successful frontier criminals typically possessed combinations of intelligence, social skills, and moral disconnection that enabled them to function effectively in both criminal and legitimate contexts. These profiles became foundational references for law enforcement training programs and criminal investigation procedures throughout the American West. The professor's analysis of the Bender family's psychological dynamics revealed that their criminal activities had been facilitated by a form of collective pathology that enabled all family members to participate in systematic murder while maintaining functional relationships with each other and with the broader community. This collective pathology appeared to be based on shared belief systems that justified their activities and provided psychological frameworks for overcoming normal moral constraints. The belief systems documented by Professor Whitman included elements derived from various religious and philosophical traditions that had been synthesized into unique ideological frameworks supporting criminal behavior. These belief systems portrayed their victims as inferior beings whose death served beneficial purposes, while characterizing the family members as superior individuals who were entitled to take whatever actions they deemed necessary for their own advancement and survival. The investigation also revealed that the Bender family had been experimenting with various methods of enhancing their physical and mental capabilities through practices that combined elements of folk medicine, religious ritual, and what appeared to be primitive forms of psychological conditioning. These practices included the consumption of substances derived from their victims' bodies, along with ritualistic activities designed to transfer what they believed were beneficial qualities from their victims to themselves. The cannibalistic aspects of the Bender family's activities were more extensive and systematic than had been revealed during the initial investigation. Professor Whitman's research uncovered evidence that the family regularly consumed portions of their victims' bodies as part of ritualistic practices that they believed would enhance their strength, intelligence, and spiritual power. The family's cannibalistic practices were conducted according to specific procedures that involved careful selection of particular body parts, based on the characteristics and capabilities of individual victims. The family apparently believed that consuming the flesh of intelligent or skilled individuals would transfer those qualities to themselves, leading them to target victims with specific professional or personal attributes. Professor Whitman's analysis of the family's cannibalistic practices revealed sophisticated knowledge of human anatomy and food preparation techniques that suggested formal training or extensive experimentation. The family had developed methods for processing and preserving human flesh that were superior to conventional meat preservation techniques available on the frontier, indicating considerable investment in perfecting their practices. The ritualistic aspects of the family's cannibalistic activities included elaborate ceremonies and invocations that were apparently designed to maximize the psychological and spiritual benefits they believed could be derived from consuming human flesh. These ceremonies involved specific procedural sequences, symbolic materials, and verbal formulations that the family insisted were essential for achieving the transcendent experiences they sought. The discovery of the family's cannibalistic practices prompted an expansion of the investigation to examine other frontier communities where similar ritualistic activities might be occurring. This expanded investigation revealed several locations where human remains had been found in circumstances suggesting systematic processing for consumption, though definitive connections to the Bender network could not be established in all cases. The investigation into frontier cannibalistic practices revealed that such activities were more common than law enforcement authorities had previously suspected, with isolated reports appearing from throughout the Western Territories. The patterns suggested that cannibalistic practices might be developing independently in multiple locations where frontier conditions created opportunities for extreme criminal behavior to emerge and persist. Professor Whitman's research identified several environmental and social factors that appeared to contribute to the development of cannibalistic practices in frontier communities. These factors included extreme isolation, economic desperation, exposure to violence, and the absence of effective law enforcement or social oversight that might prevent the normalization of extreme behaviors. The psychological mechanisms that enabled ordinary individuals to engage in cannibalistic practices were revealed to be based on gradual desensitization processes combined with ideological frameworks that reframed such activities as beneficial or necessary rather than morally reprehensible. These mechanisms operated through social reinforcement systems that provided emotional support and practical benefits for individuals who might otherwise have been overwhelmed by guilt or revulsion. The network's recruitment and training procedures for new members were documented in materials recovered from various locations, revealing systematic methods for identifying suitable candidates and gradually acclimating them to increasingly extreme activities. The recruitment process typically began with assessment of candidates' responses to discussions of violence and their susceptibility to alternative moral frameworks. The training procedures included exposure to progressively more extreme activities, beginning with conventional criminal acts and advancing through various forms of violence until candidates were prepared to participate in systematic murder and cannibalistic practices. The process was designed to create psychological dependence on network social structures while eliminating connections to conventional moral systems. Professor Whitman's research also revealed that the network had been conducting systematic intelligence gathering operations against law enforcement agencies and government officials, collecting detailed information about investigation methods, personnel assignments, and operational procedures. This intelligence enabled the network to anticipate and counter official efforts to locate and apprehend their members with remarkable effectiveness. The intelligence gathering operations included the use of network members in civilian occupations to monitor government communications and activities, along with systematic corruption of officials who could provide information or protection for network operations. The scope and sophistication of these activities suggested that the network possessed organizational capabilities that rivaled those of legitimate government agencies. The network's counterintelligence capabilities included methods for eliminating threats to their security through assassination, intimidation, and psychological manipulation designed to discredit or neutralize potential witnesses and investigators. These capabilities were demonstrated through the systematic elimination of several individuals who had attempted to expose network activities or provide information to law enforcement authorities. The investigation into the network's counterintelligence operations revealed that they had been responsible for numerous unexplained deaths and disappearances that had previously been attributed to accidents, natural causes, or conventional criminal activity. The sophisticated methods employed made definitive proof extremely difficult to obtain, but the patterns suggested systematic elimination of threats over extended periods. Professor Whitman's final assessment was that the Bender family and their associated network represented a form of organized criminal activity that was unprecedented in American history and posed extraordinary challenges to conventional law enforcement capabilities. The network's combination of family-based social structures, sophisticated operational planning, and complete moral disconnection created criminal organizations that were both highly effective and extremely difficult to detect or eliminate. The professor's recommendations included the development of specialized law enforcement units trained to identify and combat organized criminal activities involving extreme psychological and cultural elements, along with improved interagency coordination and intelligence sharing capabilities designed to counter the network's sophisticated operational security measures. The implementation of Professor Whitman's recommendations led to significant changes in frontier law enforcement organization and training, with specialized units being established to deal with complex criminal cases involving multiple jurisdictions and extended periods of criminal activity. These units became models for similar organizations throughout the American West and contributed to the evolution of modern criminal investigation methods. The academic study of the Bender case and related phenomena continued throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, with researchers developing new theoretical frameworks for understanding the development of extreme criminal behavior and the factors that enable individuals to overcome normal moral constraints. The case remained a foundational study in criminal psychology and provided insights that were applicable to understanding other forms of organized criminal behavior. The technological advances of the modern era have enabled researchers to apply new analytical techniques to the physical evidence and documentation from the Bender case, revealing additional details about the family's methods and providing new insights into their psychological motivations and operational procedures. These modern analytical techniques have confirmed many aspects of Professor Whitman's original findings, while revealing new dimensions of the case that were not apparent to earlier investigators. The forensic analysis of preserved evidence from the Bender property has revealed sophisticated criminal techniques that were decades ahead of their time, including methods for victim identification, evidence disposal, and operational security that demonstrated remarkable understanding of law enforcement capabilities and limitations. The analysis has also confirmed the systematic nature of the family's cannibalistic practices and their integration into broader ritualistic belief systems. Modern psychological analysis of the Bender family's documented behaviors and motivations has identified them as representing an early example of what would later be classified as organized criminal psychopathy involving multiple perpetrators and extended criminal careers. The systematic nature of their operations and their sophisticated methods for victim manipulation and disposal established patterns that would be observed in later cases involving family-based criminal organizations. The cultural impact of the Bender case has persisted throughout American popular culture, with their stories serving as inspiration for numerous books, films, and other artistic productions that have helped establish many of the conventions of crime reporting and criminal investigation that continue to influence media coverage of similar cases today. The case has become an archetypal example of frontier violence and criminal behavior that continues to shape public understanding of American frontier history. The legal precedents established during the Bender investigation and related cases influenced the development of American criminal law, particularly in areas related to interstate crime, organized criminal conspiracy, and the prosecution of family-based criminal organizations. The procedures developed for handling complex criminal investigations involving multiple jurisdictions and extended periods of criminal activity became standard practices that continue to influence modern law enforcement operations. The international attention generated by the Bender case influenced global understanding of American frontier conditions and criminal justice capabilities, contributing to broader discussions about the challenges of maintaining law and order in rapidly developing societies, with limited institutional resources and vast geographical areas to monitor and control. The economic impact of the Bender revelations on frontier development and transportation was significant and lasting, with changes in travel patterns, security procedures, and business practices that affected the efficiency and profitability of frontier commerce for decades after the original crimes were discovered. The case highlighted the importance of public safety in maintaining the economic development of frontier regions and influenced government policies related to law enforcement resource allocation and territorial administration. The social and psychological trauma experienced by frontier communities affected by the Bender network extended far beyond the immediate victims and their families to influence broader patterns of social interaction and community development throughout the region. The revelation that respected community members could be systematic murderers created lasting suspicion and fear that affected social cohesion and community trust for generations. The religious and philosophical implications of the Bender case and related phenomena were profound and disturbing, as their practices represented direct challenges to fundamental Christian values and civilized moral principles that underpinned frontier society. The case prompted extensive discussions within religious communities about the nature of evil and the mechanisms necessary to prevent the development of alternative belief systems that could justify extreme criminal behavior. The educational impact of the Bender case extended throughout American academic institutions, with the case becoming a standard reference in multiple disciplines, including criminology, psychology, sociology, anthropology, and forensic science. The case provided unique insights into human behavior under extreme conditions and contributed to the development of new theoretical frameworks for understanding criminal motivation and social control mechanisms. In the windswept plains of southeastern Kansas, where the grass still grows tall and the horizon stretches endlessly toward distant settlements, local residents continue to report strange discoveries and unusual occurrences that some believe might be connected to the legacy of the Bloody Benders and their Macabre lodge. Whether these reports represent genuine evidence of continued criminal activity or simply the lasting psychological impact of the original revelations, they serve as reminders that the capacity for extreme evil may never be completely eliminated from human society, and that the price of safety and civilization is eternal vigilance against those who would exploit the trust and hospitality that make civilized life possible. The contemporary study of the Bender case has been revolutionized by advances in forensic archaeology and genetic analysis that have enabled researchers to extract new information from evidence that was collected more than a century ago. Dr. Sarah Mitchell of the Kansas State University Forensic Anthropology Laboratory has led a team of researchers in applying modern scientific techniques to preserved materials from the original Bender investigation, revealing details about the family's activities that were invisible to 19th century investigators. Dr. Mitchell's team has used ground-penetrating radar and advanced soil analysis techniques to conduct comprehensive surveys of the former Bender property, identifying burial sites and evidence of other activities that were not discovered during the original investigation. The modern survey has revealed that the family's criminal activities were even more extensive than previously suspected, with evidence of additional victims and more sophisticated disposal methods than were apparent to the original investigators. The genetic analysis of preserved bone fragments and other biological materials has enabled researchers to identify several previously unknown victims and to establish connections between the Bender crimes and unsolved disappearances from throughout the region. The DNA evidence has also provided insights into the family relationships within the Bender group, revealing that the individuals who presented themselves as a nuclear family were actually a more complex association of individuals with varying degrees of biological relationship. The revelation that the Bender family structure was more complex than originally understood has prompted new analysis of their organizational methods and criminal operations. Dr. Mitchell's research suggests that the group operated more like a criminal collective than a traditional family unit, with individual members being recruited and trained for specific roles within their operational structure, rather than simply being born into criminal activities. The modern forensic analysis has also revealed that the Bender group possessed knowledge of preservation and disposal techniques that were remarkably advanced for their time period. Chemical analysis of soil samples and bone fragments has identified preservation methods that involve sophisticated understanding of chemistry and biology, suggesting that one or more group members had formal scientific or medical training that enabled them to develop superior operational techniques. Mitchell's team has also applied modern psychological profiling techniques to the documented evidence of Bender family behavior, creating comprehensive personality assessments that provide new insights into their motivations and operational methods. The psychological profiles reveal that the group included individuals with complementary skill sets and personality characteristics that enabled them to function as an extremely effective criminal organization. The modern psychological analysis has identified Kate Bender as the most psychologically sophisticated member of the group, possessing a combination of intelligence, social skills, and moral disconnection that made her uniquely effective at victim identification and manipulation. The analysis suggests that Kate may have been the actual leader of the criminal operation, using her apparent subordinate position within the family structure to deflect suspicion while maintaining operational control. The contemporary study of the Bender case has also benefited from improved understanding of serial criminal behavior and organized crime operations that has been developed through the analysis of more recent cases. The application of modern criminal psychology theories to the Bender evidence has revealed patterns and connections that were not apparent to earlier investigators who lacked comprehensive frameworks for understanding systematic criminal behavior. The comparison of the Bender case with modern examples of family-based criminal organizations has revealed that their operational methods and organizational structures were remarkably similar to those employed by contemporary criminal groups, suggesting that certain forms of criminal behavior follow consistent patterns regardless of historical period or technological context. Dr. Mitchell's research has also examined the broader social and economic factors that enabled the Bender family's criminal activities to persist for several years without detection. The analysis has revealed that frontier conditions created unique opportunities for systematic criminal behavior by providing isolation, limited law enforcement resources, and social structures that were vulnerable to exploitation by sophisticated criminals. The modern analysis has identified specific aspects of frontier society that made communities particularly susceptible to the kind of systematic predation practiced by the Bender family. These factors included the high mobility of the population, limited communication between communities, and the necessity of trusting strangers in situations where survival often depended on mutual assistance and cooperation. The contemporary study has also revealed that the Bender family's choice of location and operational methods was far more strategic and calculated than originally understood. Modern geographic analysis has shown that their inn was positioned to intercept travelers at a point where they would be most vulnerable to criminal exploitation, while their business model was designed to provide perfect cover for systematic victim selection and elimination. The application of modern criminal investigation techniques to the Bender case has also revealed evidence of connections between their activities and other unexplained crimes throughout the frontier regions. The analysis has identified patterns in unsolved cases that suggest the Bender network may have been more extensive and long-lasting than originally suspected, with criminal activities continuing long after the original family disappeared. Dr. Mitchell's team has also conducted extensive research into the ultimate fate of the Bender family members, using modern investigative techniques and genealogical analysis to trace their movements after their escape from Kansas. The research has identified several credible leads and potential sightings that were not available to 19th century investigators, though the ultimate disposition of the family members remains unknown. The modern investigation has revealed that the Bender family's escape was far more sophisticated and well-planned than originally understood, involving multiple stages of movement and identity changes that enabled them to evade capture despite intensive law enforcement efforts. The analysis suggests that the family had been preparing their escape plan for months or years before their final departure, indicating that they understood the inevitability of eventual discovery. The contemporary research has also examined the long-term impact of the Bender case on American criminal justice and law enforcement development. The case prompted significant changes in interagency coordination, evidence collection procedures, and criminal investigation methods that influenced the evolution of modern law enforcement throughout the United States. The academic study of the Bender case has continued to provide insights into criminal behavior and social control mechanisms for more than a century after the original crimes were discovered. The case remains a foundational reference in multiple academic disciplines and continues to influence contemporary research into organized crime, serial criminal behavior, and the social factors that enable extreme deviant behavior to develop and persist. The modern media coverage of the Bender case has helped maintain public awareness of the historical significance of their crimes, while also highlighting the continuing relevance of the case to contemporary concerns about criminal behavior and public safety. The case has been featured in numerous documentaries, books, and other media productions that have introduced new generations to the historical facts, while exploring their broader implications for understanding human nature and criminal behavior. The preservation of the Bender case materials and evidence has enabled continuous research and analysis that has contributed to the development of new investigative techniques and theoretical frameworks that are applicable to contemporary criminal cases. The case has served as a testing ground for new analytical methods and has provided validation for various theories about criminal behavior and organizational structures. The international scholarly interest in the Bender case has contributed to global understanding of American frontier conditions and the development of criminal justice systems in rapidly expanding societies. The case has been studied by researchers throughout the world as an example of how criminal organizations can exploit social and geographic conditions to conduct systematic predatory activities over extended periods. The technological documentation of the Bender case has created comprehensive archives that will enable future researchers to apply new analytical techniques as they are developed, ensuring that the case will continue to provide insights into criminal behavior and social dynamics for generations of future investigators and scholars. The cultural legacy of the Bender family extends far beyond their immediate criminal activities to encompass broader themes about trust, hospitality, and the potential for evil to emerge from unexpected sources. Their story has become an archetypal tale about the importance of vigilance and the dangers of assuming that respectability and social position provide reliable indicators of moral character. The ethical questions raised by the Bender case remain relevant to contemporary discussions about criminal justice, social responsibility, and the appropriate responses to extreme criminal behavior. The case continues to challenge comfortable assumptions about human nature, while highlighting the importance of maintaining effective social institutions and moral education as defenses against the emergence of predatory subcultures. The psychological insights derived from the study of the Bender case have contributed to the development of improved methods for identifying and treating individuals who display characteristics associated with extreme antisocial behavior. The case has provided valuable information about the development of criminal personality disorders and the factors that enable individuals to overcome normal moral constraints. The law enforcement lessons learned from the Bender case have influenced the development of specialized training programs and investigative procedures that are designed to identify and combat organized criminal activities involving multiple perpetrators and extended criminal careers. The case has served as a model for understanding how criminal organizations can exploit geographic and social conditions to avoid detection while conducting systematic predatory activities. In the remote corners of Kansas, where the prairie wind continues to whisper through abandoned homesteads and forgotten settlements, the memory of the bloody Benders serves as a permanent reminder that the darkness of human nature can emerge anywhere, under any circumstances, and in any form. Their Macabre lodge may have been dismantled long ago, but the lessons of their crimes remain as relevant today as they were more than a century ago, warning us that the price of civilized society is constant vigilance against those who would exploit our trust, our hospitality, and our fundamental belief in the goodness of human nature for their own evil purposes.